Set me.
Okay. Welcome to Monday, February 7th, 2022, Board of Directors meeting for MSAD 51. Make sure you guys can hear me. I just want to make a quick note that we have a student that is helping us this evening, and I believe will be helping us going forward. His name is Aaron Hallowell, and he is helping us with our tech and sound, and we just want to say thank you so much to Aaron. He looks very focused right now, but we appreciate you being here. And thanks for your help. Tonight we do have some recognition. Jeff, do you want to give a little bit of background about tonight's recognition?
Yes. The high school usually every year has a Poetry Out Loud competition, and there are usually finalists that come into the Art Center or wherever in the school and are part of the school-wide competition. So Joan Guile and teachers from the English department oversee that, so I think Joan is going to be introducing Chloe, and come up to the podium.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good evening. So Poetry Out Loud is a national recitation competition where students, they choose poems, they memorize poems, and then they recite them in competition against one another. This program was created by the National Endowments of Arts and the Poetry Foundation. Poetry Out Loud is administered in partnership with state agencies in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Students are evaluated on several different categories: physical presence, voice and articulation, dramatic appropriateness, evidence of understanding, overall performance and accuracy. And GHS has participated in Poetry Out Loud since 2009. We've had thousands of students who have competed at the classroom level. This year we had over 100 students compete at the classroom level, and 10 were invited to our classroom competition. This year's runner-up was 10th grader Charlotte Libby, and our winner is here tonight, Chloe Schumann. I am pleased to introduce Chloe, who will recite one of her 3 poems for the Southern Maine Regional Competition. So classroom competitors recite 1 poem, our school competitors recite 2 poems, and now she will have to recite 3. And it will actually be a virtual competition, but the state meet will be a live competition in March, and I am confident she's going to be moving on. So I welcome her tonight, congratulate her, and hope her for the best for that competition.
Hello. Okay. The Light of Stars by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The night has come, but not too soon, and sinking silently, all silently, the little moon drops down behind the sky. There is no light in earth or heaven, but the cold light of stars, and the first watch of night is given to the red planet Mars. Is it the tender star of love, the star of love and dreams? Oh no, from that blue tent above, my hero's armor gleams. And earnest thoughts within me rise when I behold afar, suspended in the evening skies, the shield of that red star. O star of strength, I see thee stand and smile upon my pain. Thou beckonest with thy mailed hand, and I am strong again. Within my breast there is no light, but the cold light of stars. I give the first watch of the night to the red planet Mars. The star of the unconquered will, he rises in my breast, serene and resolute and still and calm and self-possessed. And thou, too, whoever thou art, that readest this brief psalm, as one by one thy hopes depart, be resolute and calm. Oh, fear not in a world like this, and thou shalt know ere long, know how sublime a thing it is to suffer and be strong.
Thank you so much, Chloe. That was beautiful. I don't know if any other board members want to say anything, but I would like to say that this was exactly how I hope we can open our board meetings more often. If you ever want to come and practice, we will listen. I just really appreciate that you came into the time every evening to share that with us. That was a wonderful way to start our meeting. Thank you so much.
I would just like to say thank you to the board for having me and supporting the Poetry Out Loud program here at Brady High School. And yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Can the rest of the meeting be in verse?
Yes. I already wrote down a couple of things to guide me through the meeting. Yes. Thank you so much, and thank you to Joan as well. All right, moving on, we have a couple of minutes. Do we have a motion for the January 18th minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Second, thank you. Any, Jennifer, Jason, discussion?
Could we just note, please, that I had to step out for an hour out of that meeting, maybe note it in roll call, because that resulted in some abstentions, because I wasn't here for part of the discussion.
Sure, I'll make a note for that for Fran. Okay. Okay, all in favor as adjusted? Thank you. And those opposed or abstaining?
Abstain.
You're
I wasn't here.
Thank you. Okay. And then moving on, we have public comment. We want to welcome anyone to the podium. Remind everyone that this is a 3-minute period time. I will do my best to not interrupt your mid-sentence, but try to give everybody the same amount of time across the board. Anybody's welcome to approach the podium.
Hi, my name is Heidi Lesage. I'm a Cumberland resident. We are here tonight to speak up and speak out. No one talks openly about the bullying incidents that are happening. It is a behind closed door discussion, and it needs to be vocalized publicly, and it needs to be put on center stage.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, can you just speak more into the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you.
It affects an entire family. This is more widespread than what is being presented. In 2017, there were 15 incidents of bullying at GMS. In 2018, there was 1 incident. In 2019, there were 2. 2 arguments could be made. The district addressed the bullying issues, or parents and students stopped reporting bullying. From our experience, I would have to say I'm on the side that the parents stopped. It's disappointing. The district has policies to follow. They are well written and provide the step-by-step process, instructions on how to move forward with complaints. Each policy addresses certain criteria. Policies are only effective if they are followed. We are here tonight speaking in front of the board to bring to your attention, as you are the policymakers and policy enforcers, policies are not being followed. The district needs to be better. Our request on 114 to speak with the board during tonight's executive session is due to highly sensitive and hurtful information. Regrettably, we've had to work through this process with the aid of the district's attorney and our attorney to get this request approved. It's not necessary. This just demonstrates one of the many hoops that we've had to jump through from the first complaint on 9/13. In closing, I will ask that if you have not watched the documentary Bully on Netflix, please take some time and watch it. It's eye-opening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening?
My name is Dale Horton. I'm a parent of 4. I have 3 kids in the district here. Several years ago, my first child was a freshman at Brunswick High School. And starting their freshman year, my child was groomed by a sexual predator who worked at the school as a teacher. Eventually, that predator used the access they had to my child to force them into sexual acts. And my innocent child was only able to end this relationship after moving halfway across the country. And the after effects of that abuse are likely to create permanent changes in who they are and will be as an adult. You know, before I knew about this and before anybody knew about this abuse, I recommended to a friend with a teen who was thinking of moving, a musically talented teen. I recommended Brunswick High because they had this amazing music program run by this indefatigable, young, recently married, and very dedicated teacher named Michael Scarponi. He was always working, and my child was continually practicing and performing. And before and after school events with band became part of the routine. Another part of a teen's routine is looking at their phone. They text with friends and check out each other's social media posts. And I'm going to argue that the most vile of his lies and manipulations happened between their 2 smartphones. Facebook offered this predator insight into his victim's thoughts and state of mind, in addition to already holding a place of power and influence over my child. This man was also able to act as a friend and confidant. He used the first few years of their relationship becoming an important mentor who had advised us on college choices and outside musical instruction. They exchanged text messages about music. Later, he would suggest to my child that they connect on Snapchat. Apps like Snapchat allow messages to self-destruct sometime after they have been received. This is very useful if you don't want the messages and pictures that you send to show up again in front of you in a courtroom and a judge. I don't know if he broke any protocols by contacting my child on social media or via text message. He worked consciously with the goal of sexually abusing a child. He utilized text messaging, social media, my child's developing mind, and his position and power to manipulate and attack my child. And he knew what he was doing, but my child did not. And I'm haunted by a recurring thought about how simple it could have been to protect my child from this trusted person. That early and regular messaging about appropriate boundaries between children and adults could have created a red flag in my child's mind, a red flag that might have popped up when a grown man 20 years their senior asks to be Snapchat buddies. Our kids are smart and resilient, and we have teachers who are thoughtful and creative, and we can find ways to teach kids starting at a young age that there are appropriate ways for adults to communicate with children, just as there are inappropriate ones. I can imagine a well-meaning teacher who believes that acknowledging the existence of adults who prey on children is traumatizing. And I would assure that person that difficult conversations are not what we shy away from if we're committed to educating others. And this is what I'm asking for. We have to teach our children how to protect themselves. They need to be explicitly taught that adults who care about their safety will show that by always acknowledging boundaries, communicating respectfully, and never trying to create secrets between them. We can empower our children with the information that they need so that they can recognize when an adult is attempting to form an inappropriate relationship. We can do that by adopting this idea that our kids deserve to know enough to protect themselves, and that we, the adults, need to build this message into the curriculum across every grade level. I think that we can do better by our kids, and we owe it to them to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dale. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening?
Good evening. Jason Curry, teacher here at the high school, also president for the MSAD 51 Education Association, and debate coach. I'm told that at your last meeting you missed having an update on the debate team. I can inform you that we've had one debate in the meantime. One Greeley debater was available for that, so it was the most modest gain of the entire season. I can tell you that this Saturday we have state championships and also the national qualifiers to the NCFLs. The entire Greeley team is signed up, including our team captain, member of the board, Madison Dalton, and they are ready and raring to earn spots at nationals, which will be held, if it's held in person, they're anticipating it, in Washington, D.C. this year. So, also I'd like to thank Superintendent Porter for February 18th, for our school staff, for the closings of the school for that day. It's much appreciated and much needed after the January we've had. As we bid farewell to 2021, with all of its stresses and traumas, and even to the days of crisis we've referred to as January 2022, we've turned the corner on some of the darkest days of the last years, and for some of us, the darkest days of our entire lives. Yet, not everyone is ready to celebrate. Infection rates at the elementary school are still disturbingly high, and emergency measures there, which demand more out of the staff, are still in place at the Wilson School. Furthermore, many staff members have a sense of profound loss as we stop and take a breath, now that some of the worst of it is behind the most of us. I know at least 3 of my coworkers who will see out this week having lost a loved one recently, and they aren't anywhere close to joining us in celebrations. Your employees have put in tremendous time and energy through the month of January, grading mountains of work which we assign in order to develop a fuller picture of our students' abilities and deficiencies to meet what the community expects, the standards of academic, social, and emotional growth, in order for our district to maintain its nationally recognized reputation for excellence. We took our work home with us, turning our attention away from family and friends as needed to meet deadlines and expectations. We spent hours reminding students in the halls and in classes to wear their masks over their mouths and noses properly, to maintain social distance, to limit spread, and to treat school property with respect, and also to maintain their own physical and psychological well-being throughout it all. We've been giving you our best and giving you our all. Now is not the time to celebrate. We're too exhausted for that at this point. Now we should look at where we are, where we've been, and assess the damage and see what needs repair and where change needs to happen before another crisis or another wave of tribulation hits. We ask, as teachers and school staff, bus drivers, guidance counselors, school psychologists, we ask for your patience, your attention when we need it, and your understanding as we walk, hobble, and slide towards February vacation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Curry. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Hannah Barry. I'm a parent in Cumberland, 4 children, ages 10 to 16, 3 in the district. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I always do. I always quietly at home am doing my part to stay connected to the community and the people that are working here in the community for our children. So I appreciate the chance to be out tonight. I can't always make it, but I do appreciate the opportunity when I can. I am here tonight, gosh, so many things I dream of. One of which I know we have an opening at the high school, and I know staffing decisions are made by the board. I just encourage you to consider the importance of the leader of the high school, and I don't even know who's being considered, so I have no eggs in that basket, but I do have a high schooler and 2 coming in, and I know that It's an important role, so I just ask you to keep the needs of the students in mind when electing, hiring that new position for the fall. I also want to thank Chloe. She's gone home now, but she's on my daughter's ski team, and she's a wonderful Nordic skier, and her and her sister, so it was nice to see her in a different role tonight with the poetry speak. COVID, still going strong. I asked the board to consider making masks optional before the end of the school year. A lot of people are growing weary. I heard the staff is growing weary. I fully understand that. Families are growing weary too. The students are the ones going every day to get their education. It is a requirement that they attend. It is a state law that they be allowed to attend. It is not required to do teaching as a profession. And I'm struggling with the moral decisions of some of our teachers here and their level of caregiving. I have had a lot of struggles with some specific faculty member, and I'm not here to discuss specifics, but I just need you to understand that the mental and well-being of our children is really hanging in balance. And I'm an adult, and I work in mental health. So I understand the stressors that everyone's under, but I also understand what we develop as adults as coping strategies. Our children have yet to develop those. The little kids have very few. The teenagers are going through a huge maturation process, and they don't have great coping skills. We parents are also really struggling to provide that safety that they need to develop into well-adjusted adults. So I encourage you just to maybe give them a little choice in the end of the school year, because they're really feeling like they haven't had any say for a long time. So I'd ask you to consider making these optional. So much science out there on the efficacy of most of the cloth masks that the kids are wearing anyway.
And I just want to say we have reached 3 minutes, but I'll let you finish.
Oh, thank you. I don't set a timer, Tyler. I appreciate that. Lastly, enjoy the rest of winter. I, for one, am enjoying getting out there. I have 3 kids on the Greeley Nordic team. We picked up skiing in the pandemic because I know how to make lemonade out of lemons. So when indoor track closed, we joined the Nordic team. Super fun sport. We have some great parent volunteers that really make the team happen, and I thank everyone, and I'd encourage you to come out and see a race. It's actually quite exciting. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Hannah. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Hello, I'm back again. Nick Danbury, Cumberland. I have a kindergartner, and I'm going to second that. I would like my child to be able to go to school with an optional mask. I've expressed my concerns, so I'm just here to reiterate and appeal to the board to be leaders in our community. I know you all just go up the chain, this is what the state's telling us, but we can make decisions here. So please, let my child have the start to a school year be somewhat normal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, I just want to say that I want to say thank you to everybody that came to speak, but I also want to acknowledge Heidi and Courage and Brady for speaking tonight. I know the topics that you spoke are hard. I know we have spoken in the past. I know this is not the best avenue to have dialogue, but I want to acknowledge your bravery and thank you for coming to speak with us. Our printer is not working, so hold on 1 second. I believe our next item is communications. What's next on the agenda? Thank you. Mike Williams, I believe you have something.
Yes, just a quick note that I got from the folks at Foundation 51. For people who don't know what Foundation 51 is, it is the Education Association, not the Education Association, the Education Foundation associated with our district. They keep grants to innovative projects that happen in the district. The head of Foundation 51 asked me, she couldn't be here tonight, but she asked me to just relay that the spring grant cycle is open. It's open for teachers or community members who have really cool ideas that want to bring them to our district to apply, and you can get funded to do those really cool ideas. There's the robotics that came out of that, which is a great example, and a number of other items. You can check out their website, foundation51.org, for more information.
The other thing I'd like to mention, unless other board members have anything, is that this Thursday morning, I believe Mike Williams will be joining some other Cumberland and North Yarmouth Select Board and Town Council members just to share about joining either this board or running for office in your community, what that looks like, an ability to ask questions. And I believe that series is going to run through the first week of March. It's going to be available online. You can participate in person or online, ask questions. I believe there's a theme at each week, but most important is that you get a chance to come and ask questions if you're interested in serving. And Vanessa, you had a good idea to remembering. We do have some positions that will be up on this board as well as in both towns. So there's always kind of opportunities to run and serve your community. Okay, so moving on, we do have a workshop this evening about the new school project, and Oak Point Associates is here to join us. I think we'll have you guys join us up on the stage, if that's all right. And I believe we'll start with Jeff to kick this off.
I think Peter's going to do a quick intro, though.
As the board probably has remembered, the Facilities and Finance Committee have met jointly twice. The first meeting to just review the large picture regarding the original proposal, which was to do 4 or 5 at Wilson and then a K through pre-K through 3 school in North Yarmouth. Well, after some preliminary work with Oak Point and such, the costs looked way too prohibitive to make a lot of sense. So we've gone back to the drawing board and are now looking at a 3 through 5 model at Wilson, and the new school in Yarmouth would be pre-K through 2. And Jeff is going to go over what his team has come up with as far as what the new, what the 3-5 Wilson School would look like. And then Tyler Barter from Oak Point will give us the first couple looks at what a pre-K through 2 school in North Yarmouth might look like. And at the end of this workshop, I think the goal is to have some direction from the board to continue on with this process with further drawings, further work with the numbers and such. So Jeff, do you want to take off on the Wilson model?
Yes, thank you, Peter. So the Facilities Committee delegated the responsibility, as Peter mentioned, to myself and our team in the district office to re-look at the Wilson School project again and what grades could actually fit into that building based on the most recent numbers that were completed by Rebecca Wandell. Rebecca Wandell has done 3 different enrollment studies for the district since 2016, 2019, and she just completed her 3rd enrollment study for the district in December of 2021, so just 2 months ago. And her updated numbers are the numbers that we are using, we used in order to assess whether or not grades 3 to 5 could, in fact, be at the Wilson School without any further alterations or additions to the building. We would still be looking, obviously, at some sort of renovations at the Wilson School, but we wanted to make sure that we could use the numbers that were provided to us by Rebecca and make sure that during the peak years that we would still be able to include all of the students in grades 3 to 5 in that facility. So Rebecca Wandell's enrollment numbers at the peak would be 603 students that would be in grades 3 to 5, and that's over the next decade. So she looked at numbers all the way through 2031-32, and that would be the largest year. It ran anywhere from 560 students up to 603 students, depending on the year. We added her inflation percentage to make sure that we're covering our bases of 3% per year for the students, and we actually came up with 626 students, which would be the 603 and then adding that inflation in there. So that was the number that we worked off of in looking at these plans. So Scott Poulin, who is to my right, Director of Operations, Finance, and HR, Susie Robbins, Director of Academic Services, Julie Olson, who's Director of Instructional Support, and Carol MacArthur, who is currently the 4th and 5th grade principal and would most likely be the administrator of this school if everything goes in this direction, had a chance to look at all of the plans based on what the Facilities Committee was asking. So what you're looking at right here is the first floor of the Mabel I. Wilson School, and what we did is we plugged in the number of classrooms based on 20 students per classroom. So we were conservative. Our numbers for class sizes in the past for grades 3 to 5 have been anywhere from 21 all the way up to 24. Just to give you an idea, we used a conservative number of 20 to make sure that we could make this work in terms of classroom size. And we found that we would need anywhere from 28 to 31 classrooms depending on the year of the enrollment, whether it was 560 students or 603 students with a 3% inflation, as I mentioned, for all those years. So we literally plugged, this wouldn't necessarily be where all the classrooms would be. We wanted to make sure we're keeping them as placeholders. We plugged all of the regular education classrooms into the building. So you'll see on the first and second floor we did just that. So we've got 3rd and 4th on the first floor, 4th and 5th on the second floor of the Wilson School. And then Julie Olson, Director of Instructional Support, also looked at all of the special education needs for grades 3 to 5 going forward, the kinds of programmings that we offer, small group support, et cetera, and made sure that for placeholder purposes we had those spaces allocated in the building. We also have a STEM room that is at the Wilson School. We offer a STEM program at grades 4 to 5. Right now we have long wanted to include 3rd grade in the 4th and 5th grade STEM program. So we provide an amazing opportunity to be able to do that. We have a part-time teacher currently for that program. And just making sure that we also had a flex space for Allied Arts, which is located in the Allied Arts area on the first floor, which is across from the current gymnasium. So looking at all those spaces and having all of us looking each space over, there were 2 spaces that we had not allocated on this floor plan, and those were band and gifted and talented. However, in talking with Carol MacArthur, the 4th and 5th grade principal, she felt that given the fact that the first 3 years we would not even be up to the peak enrollment, that she certainly could make that work and then find the space down the road once she was in the building and knew the building better. So we felt comfortable, and I say we, which is the 5 of us who looked at these plans and bring it back to the Facilities Committee, that we could comfortably, based on Rebecca's numbers for the next decade, comfortably be able to house grades 3 to 5 at the Wilson School for the next 10 years without any additions to the building. Now, this does not account for the fact that the state has now granted, just in the last week and a half, the district $1.5 million. We applied for money to the revolving renovation fund to do some renovations at the Wilson School. The district received $1.5 million. 770,000 of that will be forgiven, which means it's free money to the district. The other half will be at 0% interest and paid back over 10 years. So that's a huge success and a huge win. I want to thank Mr. Poulin for filing that application and the Facilities Committee for helping to get that revolving renovations forward, and the full board for supporting that application. That money will be used for renovations to the school, which will include windows, doors, security upgrades, and some air handling systems in the building, and including things like making sure that toilets are retrofitted so that they're at the right size for students of this age level. So I think the answer, Peter, and to the Facilities Committee when we met with them last week, is that we believe that we can make the Mabel I. Wilson School work for grades 3 to 5 for the foreseeable future, and that it can be a nice facility for that age level. We also met with Oak Point Associates, the architects, and reviewed the design with them to make sure that they were in agreement with us that this floor plan would be workable. And the answer they gave was yes, it would be. So I think, again, there's some renovations that we'd like to see in there. We're getting some state money. It won't cover all of it, all the renovations. I think we'll have to decide how much we can do and how much we can't. But it goes a long way towards making this building, I think, very viable and comfortable for grades 3 through 5. So hopefully I answered your question there.
That's good, Tyler. You may want to lead the questions.
Yeah, I just want to offer, I know a majority, well, Facilities Committee went through this, but I want to offer this up to the rest of the board that hasn't had a chance to ask questions. So anyone that would like to go, Avery?
So I feel like this is a dumb question because it's never been brought up, but why don't we just add like another floor to MIW?
So there was actually an original plan that the architects put forward would add, I believe, about 10 rooms to this facility. And that was based on some older projections, and it was also based on some enhanced programming that we don't feel is necessary, and we kind of took another look at all of that. The building can be added onto in the future if there is an enrollment. Let's just say after 10 years there's more enrollment than we projected. There is space to add on to the Wilson School. There always has been. We just don't feel it's necessary at this time to do so.
Tom, do you have anything that you'd like to, or are you still digesting?
I'm good.
So we're going to still try to keep, even after the 10 years, that 4-5 grouping together.
3, 4, 5. Yep.
Right, the 3, 4, 5. But I can see if there was an enrollment issue, it would be the first obvious thing to move fifth graders up to 5, 6, 8, which is something that I'm not a proponent for. If there is an increase in enrollment.
Yeah, we didn't. That wasn't discussed with the Facilities Committee. The discussion was to keep the grade configuration 3 to 5 at least. I mean, that obviously is a whole board decision, but the Facilities Committee did not discuss it. It was a 3-5 building, basically making that commitment. The other thing is that the 6-8 numbers, they're still very comfortable, but they're up in the mid 600s over a few years for grades 6 to 8. And, we have to discuss how many students we want in that facility as well.
Okay. That was it.
No, no? All right. Anybody down at this end? No? I actually do have a question that popped up as I was looking at this. Knowing that we share some special ed between 4 through 8 in the current building, how would we have to hire an additional teacher to now cover both of those buildings? We certainly would be moving staff around for staffing. For example, we would have an FLS program. We have a 4-8 FLS program at the 4-8 Greeley Middle School. We would have 2 separate FLS programs. So we'd have an FLS program in this building and in
the 6-8 portion. Most of our special education programs are bifurcated out 4-5 or 6-8. FLS is one of the exceptions that we have, so that would certainly require another teacher.
Okay, thank you.
I actually have a question too. So one of the things I'm so deeply excited about this is that you didn't say the word modular because they would no longer be needed, right?
There would be no modulars at this building based on the numbers.
So the other thing with the renovation funding, that would not cover any repairs we need to do to the playground or fields where the modulars were?
I'm going to ask Scott to answer that question because I believe he has an idea about that.
No, we would basically take those funds from our reserve account that we have set aside, just like when we put the modulars there and did the site work, to make those repairs back to the fields and put those back. Obviously, we'd have to look at the appropriate playground structures, et cetera, for 3, 4, and 5, and what that would look like at that point as well.
Yep. Sounds good.
And then the only other piece I wanted to say is that Tyler Barter from Oak Point, I also wanted to thank you for all of the work you did on the revolving renovation application. Very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Peter, do you want to move on to North
Yeah, so we can introduce Tyler Barter from Oak Point that will go over kind of some preliminary stuff that we've come up with for the pre-K to 2 school in North Yarmouth. So go ahead.
Thank you. And I think they're going to swap over some technology for us here in just a second. And while we're waiting on that, I'm also joined here tonight by Sarah Smith. She's our interior designer and educational planner.
I assume shadow puppets are not an option while we're waiting.
Peter, you have to recite poetry now.
I love the Longfellow. I mean, that's what we were taught in school. I just thought that was fantastic.
Extraordinary. Yeah.
Wasn't under the spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands? Yep.
All right, you're next.
Peter, it's ready for your poetry recitation there.
Great. So I think Jeff's done a pretty good job of summarizing. The plan that we're presenting tonight is a little bit of a departure from what we had looked at back on December 6th with the pre-K 3 at the time. And I really think that we're on a great path with this pre-K 2 plan. This is the quick overview on what those grade level configurations are at each one of the schools. And then I think Jeff has done a pretty good job of summarizing how the space allocation within Mabel-I existing is going to work. Some of the things that we're looking at as we evaluate the final budgets for these programs and this building is what those improvements are within the building. A lot of them have been mentioned as being covered through the revolving fund. That's going to do a great job of addressing windows, exterior and interior security systems with new doors and access control system, and also addressing all of the air handling and indoor air quality within the cafeteria. That was kind of the focus on those 4 applications. Some things that we're going to be looking at to complete will be adjusting toilet heights, all the fixtures within the building for age level appropriateness. I think one of the big things that we're looking to do is remove the stage in some fashion, add some indoor natural light, so getting a good window into that space, and then some provisions for portable stage structure. And then if we can, find some additional spaces for small group instruction and staff restrooms. There's desperate need kind of for both of those pieces within the building. So we'll skip over the grade level configuration that Jeff covered. So what we wanted to start with is the current arrangement and numbers that we're looking at for the new school over in North Yarmouth. At pre-K to 2nd, we're looking at a total building capacity of just over 704. The maximum enrollment that we're expected to see is somewhere in that 650-ish range, given the individual years. What that amounts to is a total of 3 pre-K rooms, a dozen kindergarten classrooms, and then 11 each in 1st and 2nd. We'll walk through the floor plans as well on how we intend to give some long-term flexibility to the district on kind of those bubbles as they come through, and also some of the creative education spaces that we're working on. What we're looking at overall is a target of about 110,000 square foot building. We've been working really hard over the past few weeks with the facilities committee, Jeff and his staff, on really dialing in what that building program is going to be. And right now, I think we're looking at something right in that range. So we're doing, I think, pretty well kind of where we are square footage wise. So for those that aren't familiar with the site, there's about 77 acres that we're working with over in North Yarmouth. This is Gray Road as you approach. So one of the deceiving things about this site plan is the topography. So this is a fairly wooded site, as you can see, with a kind of a larger field area in the back. But what you're dealing with here is a pretty significant hill. I think we actually found that it was called Walnut Hill, something new that we learned this morning. So the topography is really one of the biggest challenges as we start to look at this access road entering from Gray Road and then kind of winding through the woods, up the hill, back down the hill. And then you see this kind of sharp turn as we go around, and that's really to help resolve some of that grade as we come down to the main entrance level of the fields and the building. We end up with a dedicated parent loop on the upper side and then bus loop on the lower side that also serves as our service drive and access back to the playground. As we start to look at this in a little bit more, a little bit larger scale, we end up with subsurface wastewater, so the septic system kind of to the northern part of the site. We're looking at adding a Little League field to the project as well to make sure that we're getting some good athletic facilities out there for the district. And then there's an close look at both the entry plaza and those parking and drop-off areas. So some of the changes since we met last were some of the things that we discussed in adjusting some of the wing orientations to take advantage of natural light and daylighting, optimizing the building for future photovoltaic solar power generation on site, but really trying to maximize that space. So what we did is we rotated this front wing about 15 degrees, and then the opposite on the backside for the lower southern wing, another 15 degrees. What that did was that opened up the two classroom wings, allowing us to both improve the daylighting, the views, and also give us a little bit of a better opportunity to program some outdoor play and learning areas. Sarah will go through the plans in a little bit more detail in just a minute, but one of the things that we're looking at is access road into the kitchen drop-off here in the front. The library located here gives good proximity to the outdoor play and learning areas kind of on that upper piece of the building. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah to discuss the floor plan and the arrangement there.
Thanks, Tyler. Can you hear me? Oops. Sorry, hold on. I went forward. As you can see on this plan, it's kind of turned pretty similar to the orientation that Tyler had on the site plan, but over here, there we go. Here is this would be the main entry into the building. We've situated the school to be in zones or sort of houses, if you will, so that we can break up the classrooms. On the front here, we have the main entry. To the right, we will have the administrative wing that's all in here together, and that also includes the nurse's suite. As you come down this hallway here, this is where the gymnasium space would be. This is a space that's large enough to be divided into two, and we will have a small bay of bleachers in that space as well. But that leaves it in a really great location for parent and visitor access right into this space. So this kind of zone here is more of a public space. We also have the cafeteria space off to the left-hand side here that Tyler had also mentioned. And then we'll also have some outdoor garden and outdoor eating spaces here that are available in this green area as well. Across here we have the music room. This is located here because it can act as a green room space for performances that can happen on a portable stage within either the cafeteria space or the gymnasium space. So it's kind of a flexible area depending on if you're having any kind of performances that people can be in this space and then kind of like a backup stage, if you will. One of the things about this plan, this is a concept plan, so it's not fully developed as far as like all the different design details that we have as we go along further into the design. But the way that we've designed it is to have these access corridors that connect in between the houses, and they have both views in in both directions, so it's almost going through like a glass connector. So that it's really a connection to the outside for the children, so that they're not just going down a dark hallway. They come into this area. We will incorporate some designs into here with maybe some seating that's in that space, some peek outs and different things that are intriguing to a child, but that gets further into the design. As we've come down into this area, off to this left in the salmon color here, this is the pre-K. So trying to keep this as close to the main entry as possible for the little walkers. But here we have the 3 classroom spaces. And what you're going to see in each of the wings are these purple spaces. So we have classroom spaces in each of the wings, and then also these purple areas. And they are sort of breakout programming areas for small and larger group learning. And we also have some chill zones that are spaces that will be more of a sensory space for a child that just needs a moment to get away and take a few moments. So you'll see those in each of the wings as well. And then there's also this piece here on the lower section. This is the library space and also technology support in this spot here. Again, as Tyler mentioned on the site, great areas for outdoor garden from directly off of the library. And also here we have an amphitheater and sort of a indoor climbing structure that we will work on in the design that's right outside the library space, so that the doors open here and it becomes a really great presentation or small performance space. It's not meant to be a space that can hold the entire school, but something more appropriate to the age level of the students that will be here for having a few classes together, or a small performance for parents for a number of classrooms and not the entire school. That would happen in the gymnasium space, or if it's something really big in this building here. Directly across, this is so weird outside. Directly across here is this is a wing that has allied arts here in the green, and then special ed is down in this lower level. So centralized in the building, again, everything that we try to do is to try to minimize the distance that a child would need to walk to their specials and different things like that. So that's why we've located this one centralized. One of the things to note on this plan, because of the topography that Tyler had spoke about before, all the stuff on the lower level here, the lower side here, I should say, that is at ground level. So you walk out here at all these locations. But as soon as you go across the hall here, this area is, these wings here are 2-story. So this is on the main level here, but then it drops down below to what is the lower level, which is not a basement level. It's a full walkout area. It's just the way the topography drops down. So instead of going to a second floor like you would in a normal building, you go up. In this one, you come down. So again, you come through this area here. We'll have the amphitheater on one side, and then direct views to the outside. The purple that you see here, this is the kindergarten wing. So again, all the kindergarten classrooms, there's 12 of them here. Purple, the light purple is small group learning. And then again, we have all of the support spaces that are needed for the staff. So there's the staff room is in that space. There's bathrooms for the staff. There's bathrooms within all of the classrooms. There's also nursing mother spaces. There's any of the technology for the building. So everything is really kind of in that house, if you will, so people don't have to travel far out of their area.
The other good thing about this plan is the ability to break these wings down for a safety and security purpose. We have the ability to essentially lock individual wings as you work your way down this building, so that if the building does have to go into lockdown, that we can automate this from a button in the main office and really provide you some good layered security in the building.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you want to go to the next? Is it just this one? Okay. So here you see this is that lower level that I discussed, and down here we have first and second grade. Again, set up the same exact way. So we tried to be very mindful of the way that the building's constructed so that we can have a lot of repetition of the structure as well to minimize cost and things. So here we have, again, in the blue, this is a grade wing, in the green is another grade wing, and then all the support spaces. So this one has all the little small group learning, these small purple spaces that you see here. The other thing that we have in each of these spaces is also this larger project area. So it's a centralized project area for that grade wing that different things can happen there to bring 2 classes together. We can have project spaces in there as well. We can have it as a STEM space set up for the younger learners. So it's really a multi-use space. But the other thing that it serves really well as is a buffer if for some reason you were to have a bubble class that came through. So what can happen in this design is that there's a wall that just gets put across here, because right now in this design it's open. But a wall would be put across and it becomes another full classroom. It's sized exactly the same as the standard classrooms down here. So it really offers that flexibility of space within here. I know there was a lot of concerns of what do we have to add on, if we have to add on. These wings are able to expand, so that is part of the design as well, but we believe that this is a really good way of designing in a buffer into your building without having to go to any construction add-on. Again, here, this is walkout level here. Same thing at the end of this wing, and then the same thing coming out of the space in the middle. So a lot of access to the outside, and different topographies. On this side of the site, it looks more down into sort of a wetland and water area in the back here, but then on the flip side of the building, it looks up the hill and into that topography that we can add some really interesting learning and outdoor play space.
So the last thing we wanted to cover is a little bit of a comparison on kind of the 3 options that we have looked at so far. In the first column is the pre-K1 Greeley campus option, and this is what was presented, I guess, last August was kind of the final presentation on that one, where we were looking at about 74,000 square feet of new construction in that new primary school, which was K-1. We were looking at a pretty healthy addition at Mableye, and then a total project cost of just under $64 million. So just a little bit of a context of where we are. That middle column is where we're looking at currently, so the one that we just talked about. The building, we're targeting that 110 to 114,000 square feet. We're well within that range. We're looking at about $1.5 million of that the school revolving renovation fund in there. As Jeff had mentioned, $770,000 of that is forgiven. The rest is that no interest loan. We're looking at a new construction cost, including all of the off-site improvements, water, the access road, getting power to the site, and everything along that comes with that, in that $67 to $69 million range. We've been working pretty hard at reducing the development of footprint for the site, and I think we're feeling much more comfortable about hitting that $67 million side. So, we've been working hard to reduce the square footage of the building, not give up the educational goals that you've set, and also reducing the site costs as much as we can. So Jack and Allison, who will be here at future meetings to go through that stuff in more detail, have been working really hard to reduce how much we're impacting the site. And then we're working on kind of finalizing what the remaining work at Mableye is, whether all of those improvements to restroom facilities, the cafeteria, and any additional improvements outside of the revolving fund project. So, that one we're targeting, trying to stay under that $70 million mark. And I think that last column is kind of what led to a lot of the changes that you'll see tonight that we've discussed, is that adding the 3rd grade to that campus increased the building size to pushing 150,000 square feet, which was really just a massive facility. And as you work your way down, you still had the work at Mableye, that $1.5 million, but it really led you into, I think, as kind of an uncomfortable area for cost overall in that $83 to $85 million range, which being able to house those 3 grades in Mableye, I think really gave some pause overall on is the community going to be able to support this? So that's the kind of the quick summary of the project to date.
Thank you both so much. Peter, anything?
Just questions from the board, and then we can see where we go next.
Okay. Does anybody have any burning questions at the moment? Anyone down at this end?
So I guess what we're looking for. Yeah.
So one of the things that popped up as I was reviewing this again is the note on the mention of the outdoor space, access to outdoor learning, eating outside is pretty heavy at the North Yarmouth space. what I'm imagining is those kids are going to come to Mabel Wilson, which is now an intermediate school, and not have that space at all. Not to say we can't do it, but we're not really focusing it at Mabel Wilson in the same way that we are from the pre-K to 2. And I wonder, just as I just want to kind of make a note of it, that as we continue to think about Mabel Wilson, that we don't lose those opportunities, because those kids are going to be looking for that when they enter in 3rd grade. And that would be a huge missed opportunity if we don't look at that space that all of our modulars are on right now to utilize for outdoor learning and eating and everything else that we're teaching them to do pre-K on. I just want to make sure we lose sight of that in the intermediate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I was just going to add that also then keeping in mind that when the students do transition over to the Wilson School, how much they could still utilize the outdoor space in North Yarmouth, especially with the wetland opportunity and how it does have those obviously unique natural aspects that we don't have right here on campus.
Sure, absolutely. Anyone have any feedback or questions regarding kind of this next phase or what we're looking at right now?
I just wanted to add that I really appreciate Oak Point's design on this new school. We've asked them to do multiple designs based on where we're at over the 3-year process, but I have to say, and we've had probably, three meetings now in the last couple of weeks to talk about this design, and it's really, I get more excited every time I see what more you've added and what this project is going to look like, and I think it really combines so many of the things that we've been talking about for a new school into this school, into the site, just the fact that you've angled the wings of the building for optimal light. You've got security measures. You've got a lot of natural light coming into the hallways. We even talked about the other day, I know that you were looking into a whole new security feature for the office and how to get people in and out of that building and do it with utmost security, really the most current security that we can think of. And just the instructional spaces, the amount of daylight, the features in it, at a cost that I think the community is more comfortable with in the mid-60 $60 million range. I think that you've done an amazing job of getting us to this point. I just want to thank Oak Point for the work, because I get more excited every time I see it, and as each week goes by, we'll see even more of this if the board wants to continue in this direction. Is what I think is going to be an amazing project for this community if they accept it.
So I think what we're looking for tonight from the board is I guess an approval to continue with refining the design, refining the numbers, and getting to something that we can present. So I would say that's goal number one. And then, Jeff, are we still going to do that presentation for the towns Monday and Tuesday night?
Yeah, I talked with town manager Shane a few days ago, and I said that we were still planning on being at the town council meeting on Monday the 14th and the select board on the 15th.
Yeah, I will be there for both. So in kind of in the same format that we did this, I assume.
Yes, giving kind of the same information. I think a lot of it was the information that they would be interested in, and being able to ask questions of a team of people that would be there.
So Tyler, that's where we are, and I think we're looking for a go-ahead from the board to continue to proceed.
I'm not hearing a lot of comments or questions, so my gut is telling me that not everyone's feeling, maybe digesting a little bit, but feeling positive about this. I'm not getting a lot of, okay, Jason, thank you.
I'll chime in. There's not a lot of comments up here, and that's probably scary for people listening at home, like we haven't been doing our homework. I think it can be exhausting to reiterate the things that we've already hashed out in meetings, and most of the people on this board have sat through multiple meetings already, getting to this stage with Oak Point's help. I think that the middle option there is a great option. How we got here makes a lot of sense to me, having to shave out grade 3 out of North Yarmouth, and thankfully it fits at Mabel I. Wilson. The capacity or extra capacity that's left over in Mabel I. Wilson, and then in the middle school and in the high school, they sort of all align that there's extra room there. It just works very well. And then being able to remove grade 3 from North Yarmouth saves a lot of money. Like Tyler said, it brings the numbers down to a point where we don't almost fall out of our chairs. So while we're not making a lot of comments, we've been through this. I agree with Jeff. The iterations have just developed, and I'm feeling more and more comfortable about it, and it's exciting. So it's thumbs up for me.
Thank you.
Tyler, can I just say, one thing that we talked about in a meeting between facilities and finance was, a question that I had was the groupings and how we've settled here and whether the curriculum aligns, and through with 3, 4, and 5 being together. And the feedback between Carol and Susie says that that is one of the best groupings there is. So I think that, you know, with having that direction, I mean, that's one of the most, you know, one of the best things that we can accomplish is having the right fit of age kids and the curriculum that aligns together in these buildings. And to hear that feedback, I think that really helped my process as we were talking through this.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was a good point. I remember that from the original building committee 3 years ago. That was the consensus coming out of that. So thank you for bringing that back up.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, and thank you to Oak Point.
Yes.
So we will continue to work with you. Tom.
So I think, like, I don't have a lot to say about this. I think it's a smart plan, provides us with the flexibility that we need at a price point that I think we can really sell to the community. I mean, sometimes smart plans, though, are difficult to sell. So, like, for people watching at home, what's something that can get us excited about this?
Go.
Well, it's related. I had a question, because we had talked about this at the last, we've talked about it at every one I've been at, is the energy usage. You had mentioned that there is potential, and there you positioned it, the building, for prime installation of solar photovoltaics, but there's also the energy usage. You looked at potentially incorporating geothermal into the building. So one of the things is, I'm interested to see how close to net zero you're already building in to the building.
Yeah, we're definitely making strides toward net zero. I think without some additional funding, you're not going to get there, though. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're going to get you a building that exceeds the code required building envelope. So we're going to increase insulation in both the roof and walls as far as we can. We're going to evaluate our window options, see if we can, you know, maybe push into that triple pane, you know, really make some good gains there. The budget numbers that we're showing do include a geothermal system for the entire building. You know, we've talked a lot about doing both ventilation and air conditioning, and once we cross into that realm, geothermal makes a lot of sense. So, you know, we're going to be looking, you know, especially as we start moving into this process a little bit more deep, looking at ways that we can reduce that energy consumption in the building through really good daylight systems, taking a look at, you know, some passive ventilation systems that we might be able to use for some of those larger spaces, and then also working with the district to make sure that we're getting some reasonable expectations on our plug loads, kind of those phantom loads that you don't see in the building, understanding how educators are going to use it, how much we're going to have for technology and devices within the building. That way we can, you know, plan out a robust system, both on the roof and then possibly some other locations on site. If we identify these things early on, it's very inexpensive to put that infrastructure in place. So, you know, we've got all of those things on board. I'm excited about pushing this thing to as close as we can get to net zero. So, challenge accepted.
I saw Avery raise her hand.
Yeah, I'm interested in like how the water is going to work. Are there city lines that run out there? Will we need like a massive well? And what's the water capacity?
Yeah, water has actually been probably one of the big challenges on the site from the side. So we've met with the water district a couple times now, and we're going to be actually doing a water main extension just about a mile to get to the building. So what that's going to do is it's going to give us, we're going to tie into the Yarmouth Water District and get us the capacity there to meet both our domestic side and also the fire suppression side. So sprinklers, we're not anticipating any fire pumps or anything along those lines. So having the ability to tie into a municipal water system is fantastic.
I have something that makes me excited when I think about this, and I appreciate that question, because you're right. This is, everybody kind of connects to these type of projects in a different way. And I have been contacted by Royal River Conservation Trust and also Cumberland Land Trust, that they are both very supportive of this new station in North Yarmouth because it has great opportunities for trail connection, providing not only our students and our staff access to our natural conserved areas, but also the community in different ways. So that's something that I know that is on the horizon and has some great opportunity to it as well. And then I think another thing is really just getting back to having both of our towns representing our schools. That's something that I know we have not had for years, and I grew up going to school in North Yarmouth and had a great experience doing that, and I know that we can continue to kind of reinvent that connection again.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right.
I was going to add one thing to Tom's question, because I think that's a question that we should all be answering, honestly, and anybody that's going to be voting on this is going to want to answer that question. For me, it's the amazing ability to put a primary school in an area that takes advantage of the property and the natural beauty of this area of Maine. I mean, all of Maine is beautiful, but I mean, there's trees, there's even a pond out there, there's Walnut Hill. It's just a beautiful, absolutely beautiful area, and I feel like this design is taking advantage of the space instead of just kind of plunking it onto the space. And that's what I've seen Oak Point doing, and I think that just kind of makes you really excited. And also not just clearing the trees. I mean, yes, there's some trees that have to be cleared, but taking full advantage of the natural beauty of this site. And I agree with Tyler very much. I know that there are many people in North Yarmouth that would love to have a school back in North Yarmouth. This is a two-town SAD. I think, there's just a lot of, I would hope, a lot of excitement about the fact that we have, beautiful buildings in both towns that we can offer our students.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you again to Oak Point. I'm sure we will see you very soon.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right, thank you everybody for that discussion. We'll move on next to our only presentation this evening, and it is from Superintendent Porter on Grilly Gross Green update.
Yes, good night, or good evening, I should say. Not good night?
Not yet.
Not yet. Just giving another update, as I have done from the beginning of the school year. I have, or actually since early August, providing an update to the Board of Directors and the public on where we are at with the Grilly Goes Green plan, which is the plan for ensuring that we are responding to the pandemic. And one more step here to get it up there. So this is the February 7th edition. I won't go through the beginning slides, but for anyone just getting acquainted with the plan, we have a very long plan which is on the website, which outlines all the details. These are the preventative strategies that we've used. Contact tracing has now been stopped. First, it was stopped by our district, and then a week later, the state of Maine decided that we were right, and they stopped it statewide. Data and metrics for adjusting. We look at a lot of data. Our COVID advisory team, which has met many times since the beginning of the school year, there's 19 people on that team, and they advise myself and the board on where we're at with the pandemic and how it affects the schools. As of February 7th, there have been changes in state guidance since the last update. As you remember, right at the end of December, there was a major overhaul on all the state rules, but even since then, in the last couple of weeks, the state has made adjustments as well, saying that students that come back who've tested positive in days 6 through 10 should be wearing masks outdoors and should be distancing when eating. Those were the state updates. Those are not options. Those are actual state rules that we have to follow. County transmission remains high. However, we know that the number of cases is dropping in the county and in the state as it is in the nation. The cumulative number of COVID cases since my last update, which was on January 18th, we've had 190 cases reported, but most of that was toward the early part of that window between the 18th and today. Pool testing, so we have 558 total cases in our district since the beginning of the school year. That compares to 368 at my last update. For pool testing enrollment, we reopened the pool testing enrollment. We've had parents asking most of the year, can they enroll their students? So we've opened the window many times. We just last closed it at the very end of January. We had some students who have to opt out because they have actually had COVID, and you cannot be part of the pool testing program during the 90 days following testing positive for COVID. So students are automatically disenrolled during that 90-day period, and then they can be re-enrolled. But taking those students out, and then we gained some other students whose parents wanted them in, we actually didn't lose any percentage. We're at 68% of our students and 72% of our staff. And again, we've had some staff changes, so we had a small drop there from 73 to 72% of our staff participating. And then the total positive pools to date, we've had 127. We have had 50 since the last update, but I will say that that has tapered during the last week and a half or so. The last 2 cycles of pools, we were under 10 positive pools this past week. So it's going in a downward direction there. Staff COVID vaccine data and student data has inched up, keeps inching up, has been inching up all year. So we're generally in the 80% or more, 85% or more for most of our staff groups. For students, the younger students, we're collecting more and more data as they get their second shot for the youngest students. So we're seeing the 4, 5, and Mabel Wilson numbers increasing for vaccination. And even high school and middle school has gone up slightly since the last time I reported this. Student absences, there was a period of time in January where we are seeing large numbers of students who are absent from school, definitely over 10, 12%. Our numbers are much healthier as of the end of last week, where we had 98 students out one day, 82, 106. Those are more in line with what we see this time of the year with flu, colds, those kinds of those pieces midwinter. So we're averaging about 95%, 94, 95% attendance on any given day right now, which has been a change since January. Our staff absences have still been between 8 and 10% on any given day all the way through the end of last week. So our staff absences are a little bit higher than our student absences. Some of that is because staff also have children that they're caring for who might have tested positive. Daycares have closed. Schools sometimes go in red. They have to stay home with their children. That's part of it. So those numbers are a little bit higher. This is just to kind of give the board and the public an idea of where our positive case counts have been over the year, going all the way back. You can see that our case counts were below 10 at the beginning of the year, so on any weekly count was below 10 or around 10. And that was pretty flat, maybe 10, 20, 30 cases at the most, going all the way up until about Thanksgiving. And around the Thanksgiving break or just before then, we started seeing increases in positive cases, and that continued until the December break. And then when we came back from the December break, we know that Omicron was, going through the state, and you'll see that huge spike in cases, up to 150 cases in a week. And you'll see that just, I think, the second week of January. And now we have seen our case counts just as quickly as they went up, they seem to be going down. And we'll see what the next couple of weeks before the next break look like. And also we would like to look at the week or two after the break. Those tend to be we see some increases, as you could see, just before and after breaks. So we'll be monitoring that. But I think it gives you hopefully a kind of a picture of where our numbers are. They're still higher at this, quite a bit higher than they were in the fall during most of the fall months, but certainly far better than they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. Masking or no masking, this seems to be the question, and I've asked all 4 of our medical doctors who serve on the advisory group, plus I asked our nursing staff if they would weigh in on this question. So last week I got a lot of feedback from our medical team members who serve on the advisory group, and this is a summary of basically what they have said. They're pretty consistent. The CDC is continuing at this time to recommend masking still, and they would continue recommending. There was no one that deviated from that from our medical group. County transmission is still high. Even though it's not as high as it was, it's still in the high category. This was a few days ago. It was 717 out of 100,000. And the doctors and nurses agreed the target should be around moderate, which would be, right now we're in high. Moderate is 10 to 50 out of 100,000 for community transmission. Number of cases in the district I just showed you has dropped, but it's still much greater than it was in the fall. The district has a good track record. This is all feedback from the experts, not myself. The district has a good track record of closing the district just once, and that was in January due to COVID. And their advice is to not go backwards by making too quick of a decision on this. Winter was not the right time to get rid of masks. There's a lot of flu and colds, and hard to figure out sometimes if it is COVID or not, with the symptoms sometimes being the same, not having windows open, etc. Again, these are comments from our medical, our MDs and RNs. Vacation was coming up. They were concerned about patterns right before and after vacation. And then they suggested or recommended that a target date be set for reassessing face mask, and set a target date, and then have a lot of conversation about it. They certainly wanted to all weigh in again. And then the last comment was removing masks will mean state contact tracing and quarantine requirements. That is based on our current state rules. So the current, and these are rules, the SOP is not optional. And the SOP does give a district, as you know, that is enforcing a mandatory masking policy, and again, these are current rules, the ability to stop contact tracing and quarantining. And again, our district did that 1 week before we were really allowed to do that by the state, but the nurses and the doctors who advised us said it was impossible to do contact tracing at that time, so we stopped doing it for a week, and then the state agreed because statewide it was impossible. But we would be bound to restart that, at least as of today's rules, and we've gotten no word that that's changing, if we were not to have a universal masking policy in place. Now again, things change very quickly in the world of COVID. That's one thing I figured out. So what I say tonight can be different in 3 days. So the summary for this update is that our student absences have been around 5-6%, which is pretty normal for this time of year anyway on any given year. Staff absences are a little bit higher than that. Vaccination rates are up slightly. Reported COVID cases have increased overall, but have dropped during the last week and a half now, but higher than in the fall. The number of positive pools has increased, but they have slowed over the last week. Changes in the state rules have been implemented by the schools when students are returning in days 6 to 10 and have tested positive. That's a rule. I'd like to give a kudos out to all of our administrators tonight, because they are the ones that are supervising students who are eating lunch or snack in an alternate place, so the students have some privacy around that, and it's discreet. So I would like to thank our administrators for taking on those extra duties. They're also taking on lunch duties a lot of the time, most days. So they've really taken this on and made sure that they've scheduled it in their own schedules each day. So thank you to that. Universal masking in our schools alleviates many state requirements right now. If those state requirements change, we're going to be in a very different spot. Open enrollment for pool testing in January did not increase our participation rates, but I explained that earlier. We maintained our rates. And then finally, I would take the advice of our MDs and our RNs, or at least most of them, who had said we should just set a target to talk about face masks. They agreed that this is an important topic. I kind of went back and forth as to what date that would be. I'm suggesting the board discuss that as early as the next meeting, which would be March 7th. We have an COVID advisory team meeting on March 2nd. And then the next update, my next update would be on the 7th, which is when I would recommend that the board, or I would just bring that, whatever the recommendation is, from the advisory group and myself to the board meeting on the 7th, including any recommendation about removing face masks or continuing with them at that point, which is your next board meeting, of course. And then, Mr. Williams, we were able to make sure that we got the QR codes up there. Now we love them. Now they're all over the place. You're going to see QR codes everywhere. So here they are. So now you can just click, and you'll get right to where you want to be.
Thank you, Jeff. So prior to this presentation, prior to this meeting, we've had a lot of influx of inquiries about masking. We've had some, let's see, what do I want to say here? What I want to say is that we need to look at how to make a change, and that we have been doing this for 2 years almost, and that it is time for us to look forward to how can we get a little bit back of what we used to know, what school used to look like for both our staff and our students. I think from my perspective, or I know from my perspective, that if, I've learned that if we do things very quickly, it will not work, and that we have a lot of different people that are coming at this from different places. And so I would love to say that we could vote tonight and just remove masks, but I do not believe that that is the responsible thing to do for our community and for our district. And so what I'd like to do is have a discussion here tonight, if necessary, and if the board would like to, but also hope that we can come back here on the 7th with some more information from our advisory team, some more information from our county and our community to see what we can do to try and make masks optional. So I see Ian's hand, and maybe what I'll do is just kind of go down the line from there. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I believe we have consistently been looking for that mark of and working towards moving forward. I think the challenge is that, yes, we could very easily vote, and if it passed tonight, yeah, the unintended consequences and what that would actually mean for our staff working in the classrooms, and if we would be losing staff and what that would mean. So it is something that I know I personally continue to wrestle with, and I appreciate everyone who has taken the time to contact the board and give their thoughts and their family's experiences, because this isn't easy. Even for the people who wish to maintain masking, also, it's not easy for them either. So I just want to thank everyone for taking so much time and thoughtfulness to make sure that we are able to succeed the best that we can as we make these changes.
Thank you. Jason?
I have some general comments, but before we get there, Jeff, in your presentation, I think it's worth pointing out, correct me if I'm wrong, but the big spike in COVID cases also, which is like a 5-fold spike, also correlates to a 4-fold increase in pooled testing. Is that correct? Around that same time frame?
Pool testing, you mean in January, Jason?
Yeah.
No, we had, well before January, we had about that percentage of
But
people
didn't
enrolled.
Okay. Didn't we have the last update, we had those two numbers right next to each other, correct?
But the pooled testing, you're right, we also saw a correlation between positive cases and pooled testing.
Right.
So we were getting numbers from both, but certainly the vast majority were not pool testing numbers.
All right. You don't think it's valid to point out that pooled testing increased at the same time that those cases?
I think there's a correlation. I think there was just a general increase in positive cases in the school community.
But
Yes.
you wouldn't have known about a lot of those cases without the pooled testing, is that correct? Like,
We would have
they
known
were
some
asymptomatic.
some of the cases, you're right, we picked up, which was a good thing. We needed to pick those up.
So looking at that after the spike versus before the spike, there was a lot more pooled testing after that spike. So to compare before and after, that's...
Yeah, I would say the percentage of people enrolled, students and staff in pool testing prior to that spike was about the same percentage that were enrolled during that spike. So in other words, we were catching cases that we didn't catch before, or we wouldn't have caught if we had not had pool testing. So we had relatively the same number of people enrolled, and it just happens that was when Omicron was in the community, in the school community. And so the pool testing positives plus all of the cases that were being reported outside of pool testing certainly were correlated.
Okay. I thought I remember from your last update seeing two lines right next to each other that in the same time frame over a 2-week period or maybe a month period that pointed out that pool testing went up.
I have the enrollment numbers from January 18th. The total number is 1,730. Today is 1,738.
Yep.
So there's a difference of, I don't know, 8 people.
Okay. And can you explain you mentioned the administrators are covering the lunch versus who would normally cover lunch?
So we don't have that duty. So basically after the state rules changed, there are students that have to eat, if they're in the 6 to 10 day range, they've got to eat lunch somewhere else. So the administrators were sitting with those students.
But normally teachers would cover lunch duties?
Yeah, and they were. The staff was covering lunch duties, administrators are still covering lunch duties. This is a special duty, this is a special place where students who tested positive, day 6 to 10, they were in school, we have to separate them from other students, distance them. And what we didn't want to do is have a COVID table where students went to in the cafeteria. So instead, the administrators decided that it was best to have an alternate location. They don't have any staff to supervise, so they're personally doing that.
Yep. I understand. But why don't we have the staff to cover that? I mean, were there staff that wouldn't cover that?
We didn't have that space before this happened, I think is what he's saying. This is a specific
I know, but didn't we have an email where you sort of implied that teachers refused to cover that duty? Is that not true?
I think it's more that an administrator didn't feel comfortable asking staff to cover that duty.
I see.
I don't think that, and if I was a building principal, I would have trouble asking a staff member to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And so I think administrators stepped up to the plate and said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to cover it.
I see.
So.
I spent a lot of time on this today, obviously. I think you folks all sort of know where I stand. I'm pleased with the changes that have happened in the last few weeks with contact tracing and that reduction. And the lessening of quarantines. It's certainly a step in the right direction, but I do think it's interesting that we reduced our contact tracing before the state did. And you know, what's going to happen to us for doing that?
Nothing happened. I mean, there was a phone call that was made to our district by the Department of Ed to see why we did that. And the answer was, we have too many cases, we can't do it. It's literally impossible. Right. And the state actually liked the idea of discontinuing it and decided that they were going to discontinue it for the whole state less than a week later.
That's good. For me, normalcy can't come soon enough. I literally feel like the community and all the stress and everything, we're on a sinking ship and we're waiting for it to fix itself. That's how I feel. With the virus as we currently know it, I support optional masking now. I can't find the data to support continuing to mask our children. There's just too many other things that I do see though, and kids are being affected. Kids' behavior, skin rashes, kids' grades, kids' outlook on the future, kids' love for school and enjoying friends, being able to understand your teacher forming letters and sounds, being able to understand your Spanish teacher, just kids' happiness in general. How about not being fearful of a friend who isn't wearing a mask? All these things, they add up. Masks are affecting everything. Removing masks is a step in the right direction towards normalcy for everybody's sanity, to help us all relax. Masks are the foundation of our stress, our anxiety. Removing them will help us move in the right direction. And there's not data to support keeping them there. I understand the option. I support the option for people that want to do it. But I'd really like to see them removed now. You guys know where I stand. That's enough. I will be making a motion to sort of formally force the issue of at least exploring this with a March 7th date. Do you want to do that now or after items for action?
I'd like to do it with, sorry, I heard something else. I'd like to wait till items for action once we have further discussion.
I do have other questions though, Jeff, related to this stuff. So has any other school in the state, to your knowledge, lifted the mask requirement? And what were the consequences of that?
I know there were 3 districts up north at the beginning of the year who did not have a masking requirement, but I don't know any that have lifted it recently.
Okay. And were those schools, do you know if they were penalized in some way?
No, because there's nothing that says that a local district can't unmask. You can unmask today. The state has tied so many things to masking, but they've never said you can't unmask.
Okay. So along those lines, I guess if we take off the masks, then you're saying that we have to contact trace again. And so I guess my next question.
And quarantine.
And quarantine. If we don't follow all of these rules to the letter, what are the penalties that would be enacted on us? And has the state said that they would penalize us for such things?
No, they have not. I mean, you know, what I've been told is that, and I have inquired about this, Jason, I have asked the Department of Education directly what would happen. And the answer I got was, you have to follow state rules. That's your job. I'm summarizing.
So beyond that, to really get a thorough answer to that question, we have to consult Drummond and Woodson to dig into it, what that really means. I mean,
I did. I consulted with our legal counsel. The answer is, you're the superintendent, you have to follow state rules.
And did you ask the question related to the board? If the board instructed you to do something that wasn't to the letter of the rules, what are the repercussions in that case?
I think we would work with legal counsel to, the board made a decision. We would work with legal counsel to figure out what the next step would be. That's what we do.
I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. I know, don't tell Chief Rumsey, if I speed once in a while, I know the repercussions. I know there's a fee that I have to pay, points on my license. Sometimes that's a reasonable trade. It's a reasonable question, I think, to know what those repercussions are for us board. If the majority of us think that the harm that we're doing at this point is greater than the good that we're doing.
Well, can I just answer that for a minute?
Yes.
So I know there's other districts as early as, we're probably one of the first because we have a board meeting tonight, but I know of at least one other district very close to us who's going to be talking about this week at a board meeting, and they're not necessarily making a decision, but they're going to be talking about it. There'll be other districts very soon, if they haven't already started talking about masking. It's going to force, the conversation into the state level about where we're going from here. I mean, this is a conversation that I think is going to continue pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks.
So as we talk through this, the rest of the board, I guess one of my questions to the board would be, if the state changes the mask mandate, would we as a district follow as well?
Jason, if I can speak on to that, removing the mask, my biggest fear is we can remove the mask and the state can say, fine, you have to do contact tracing, and your kids are out of school now for 2 weeks if they test positive. So now we're back to kids not being in school. And the whole point is to keep the kids in school.
I understand. My wife makes the same arguments to me when I bring up these points. I hear it. I understand that your rebuttal is the rules say X. I understand.
And
my question is.
Compassion. I said I have that compassion for the mask. One of my children now has speech therapy, pretty much connected to the mask.
Yep.
So
another question for the board, I guess, if there's enough of us that think that that this should change, would the board as a whole be willing to write a letter? I know Jeff has written individual letters, but would the board write a letter asking for X, Y, and Z to change? I don't expect an answer to that, but it's something to think about. Another couple of things to think about. Could tests be sent home? I know in Massachusetts they do their pool testing, they send it home with the kids come back. I mean, it's a step in the right direction for me. I think doing, shoving a swab up the nose at school for kids is a terrible thing. Just mentally, it's a weird thing to me. And then if everyone was in pool testing or vaccinated, Jeff, could the masks be optional? Like, does that meet the chart so that pretty much we end up with no?
Yes. Yes, if everybody's vaccinated in pool testing, then if you're a close contact and you don't have symptoms, then you don't have to quarantine.
But
we still have to contact trace.
Yeah, but there would be, we wouldn't have to contact trace vaccinated people, would we?
We still trace, but when we have a list, this is how we were doing it. We have a database.
Can I ask a follow-up?
And if they're immunized, they're off, off the quarantine, we just go down the list.
I just want to follow up on that question. That chart, it's the bar chart, or like they have blocks on top of each other. So it's something where you build up, right? So you have to do all of them going up. It's not, because I had that question too, is it if you are vaccinated and boosted, are you able to not have to quarantine, not have to contact trace? Or is it you have to do, like you start at the bottom and you have to work your way up to that green block?
So if you are in pool testing, but you're not vaccinated, for example, then you are community quarantining, which is the piece where you have to quarantine in the community, but you can come to school. If you meet the other vaccination requirements, again, this is a state chart, if you meet those requirements, then you don't have to quarantine. You have to be traced, but not quarantined from school or the community.
Got it.
So obviously, the more people we have, and this was the same way it was before we stopped contact tracing. This is exactly what it was. The difference is that the state then tied a universal masking policy to the stopping contact tracing, for people who don't fall in those categories, they don't have to quarantine anymore. So as long as you enforce, universal masking, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Everybody is in.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so it collects a whole group of kids who then would not have to quarantine.
Right. Okay. Plus, going through the process or worrying or, was I a close contact? But that's another matter.
I just wanted to clarify. What I'm hearing then is if we had, in fact, more pool testing, which I don't think skews the data, especially given Omicron, but if we had everyone enrolled in pool testing, if they tested positive, they could still come to school. They wouldn't have to wear a mask.
Correct.
They would just have to abstain from various community things.
Well, if they test positive, they still would have to come. That rule is still in place. So if you test positive, you're day 6 to 10, that wouldn't change.
Yep.
So if you tested positive, then you still would have to wear a mask when you come back to school for days 6 to 10.
Okay, but otherwise, it'd be that limited, it'd be that limited.
Right, if you're a
days
close
6 to 10.
contact, though, if you're just a close contact of someone who tested positive, then you're right. You're coming back to school, you don't have to wear a face mask. So basically, we had a large group of people at one point who weren't in pool testing, weren't vaccinated. Our younger students weren't vaccinated. And obviously, that was a problem. We were contact tracing, and we're contact tracing a lot of people, trying to figure out who had to be quarantined and who wasn't quarantined. The state changed the rule, that was right at the Christmas or the December break, and said, if you have a universal masking policy, don't worry about all those other things. The only people that are out are if they test positive, that's it. That's the only people you have to put out. They changed the rules again 2 or 3 weeks after that and said, if you test positive, then you can come back to school before 10 days as long as you're wearing a mask outdoors and when you're eating. So that's where we stand. So theoretically, if we have 100% of students and staff who are either in pool testing or have gotten their vaccinations, including boosters if it's required on the chart, do not have to worry about the universal masking piece and can still be in school.
Thank you.
But they have to be contact traced. So whenever there's a positive case, we go through that process of contact tracing to make sure that we've got everybody.
So a follow-up to that kind of sounds like maybe good information. Should we look at test to stay as a piece for those people that will not full test, and does that help the equation to get us to help those people also potentially come back to school?
We've talked about test to stay because I think pool testing is really our test to stay. We don't have enough of it. We've tried to order more for kids to come back, and we're testing to stay if they're positive.
I'm talking about like home test,
do it.
like if they foot the bill for it, if they have tests at home.
Yeah, it's supply. It's even more than that. It's just supply. Just doing the pool testing, reflex testing afterwards, we were running out of supplies. That was happening statewide.
And last question, do you know when the next round of likely state changes might be coming? Have you heard anything?
I have asked and I've gotten no response.
They don't seem to have a very planned out calendar. I would say it could be tomorrow at 8 a.m. or,
yep.
Right? It comes at 8.
I get notices sometimes at 4:30. The last state rule, which was the 6 to 10 day rule, all superintendents got that at 4:30 in the afternoon without any advance notice. So if I hadn't checked my email at 5 o'clock that afternoon, I would not have known that was happening. So, and it's no fault of the state. They're just trying to respond to everything that's going on. That was a U.S. CDC decision in collaboration with the Maine CDC. And then the DOE got that decision, and they gave it to us as quickly as they could without having a meeting. So nothing about the state in that one. It's just, that's how things happen in this COVID world we're in.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm next, right? Yeah, well, duh.
Yeah,
So I want to get to a point where we can get rid of these two. I don't want to go back on other efforts. I don't want to go back to expanding quarantine. I don't want to expand in go back to contact tracing. The trends are really hardening. I'm glad that we're looking at March 7th for a full evaluation. I'm hopeful that maybe we can even get to that vote on that day. I'm very willing to take that vote. I'm not sure how I would vote yet. I would consider writing or signing a letter to the CDC, DOE. Obviously, it depends on what it says.
Stick some stuff in.
Yeah, you would. But yeah, no, I would absolutely consider that, and especially if it buttresses the things you've been saying, Jeff, too, because I don't think that we're this far apart at this point, especially with the trends of Omicron, the science behind cloth masks. We're learning more day by day. That's what this is. It's one big, awful scientific experiment, this pandemic. So, we're learning about this day by day. We know that at this point, for folks, if you want yourself to be protected, if you're vaccinated and boosted and wearing an N95 or a KN95, you conceivably have protection for 8 to 25 hours around people who are unvaccinated and unmasked. So we're getting there. The community spread numbers, I do agree, need to drop a bit more. It would be awesome if the state could give us slightly clearer guidance. It's like, how many months of this, and I still feel an idiot asking questions, but it is what it is. The state rules on kids eating alone after coming back asymptomatic. At that point, they're asymptomatic, right? You can't come to school if you have symptoms, right?
If you've tested positive, it doesn't discern it, right? If you've tested positive after day 5, you can come back.
Even if you have symptoms?
You can come back if you have improved. If you're, I believe I'm trying to remember the wording. I don't want to say it out loud, but it's improved.
Okay.
Basically.
Well, and depending on the symptoms.
And no
like,
fever.
some
Right.
of them are like more concerning than
Yeah,
others.
if you have it, right. So if it's the extended cough or something like that, but it's gotten better, sort of. But yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Kids eating alone and wearing masks outdoors.
They do get, I have to say, a couple principals have said they've had great conversations with kids.
Well, that's good, but
Board games. So I have that feedback.
that's a good thing, I guess. Silver lining. So yeah, I really appreciate us having this discussion tonight. I think we should have the same discussion again board meeting if we need to, and then really just continue evaluating this, because hopefully that line continues to drop, our community spread continues to drop, we learn more, hopefully the state gives us some clearance on these other requirements. 4 states just lifted their mask mandates: New Jersey, Connecticut, Oregon, and somewhere else. I don't know if they have other requirements tied to that, because they had a universal mask mandate in those states. They lifted that, but they say it's up to the districts to decide they want to put it in there. So that's what we've had the whole time, which, to be frank, sucks, because it puts all the pressure, local control, right? But those states are moving towards removing masks, and it's something where I think we need to be doing the same. But we needed to be doing it cautiously and clear-eyed. Yeah, I don't even think I asked any clear questions, but I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Peter?
Well, I continue to think we have not been well served by either the national government or the state government, and we kind of end up being the ones holding the bag, because the local parents and citizens, we're walking around town. But be that as it may, I think until the Omicron runs its course, which I think now they're doing what they probably should have done, is using the wastewater treatment and that type of thing. And when you look at the numbers and everything, the stuff, the cases are coming down. I think the Johns Hopkins study that just came out said that the lockdowns did more damage than they solved. And I think another article I I read today is that, you know, once this Omicron thing passes this way, we've got to learn to live with this thing. And I mean, we can't continue to do what we're doing for a lot of the reasons Jason's talked about and everything, or it's going to ruin the national psyche. So I would be in favor of taking a very serious look at this, and if the numbers are down and we don't get in too much Dutch with in causing more damage than we solve, I would seriously look at an optional mask thing in another month, because we can't do this forever, and we've got to bite the bullet at some point, and Chicken Little's going to have to be put back in his little chicken pen or something. So that's I don't have a lot of scientific stuff. It's just how I feel.
Thank you, Peter.
There's so many thoughts that go through my head with this. I just got over the Omicron virus. It was awful. I was down for 2 weeks. I hated it. I'm vaccinated. I wear my mask. I do the antibacterial. Neither one of my kids got it. My husband had it. I survived. You know, I'm still here. It's a really bad cold, but it's not fun. I have a choice. I was vaccinated. Teachers have a choice to be vaccinated. You get to the point where you get in a car, you put your seatbelt on. If you don't, that's your choice. We need to get to that point where the kids feel comfortable, where we feel comfortable saying, it's okay to have your mask off. It's going to be very difficult, but I think we need to move there to build confidence. Yes, I know people are dying. Yes, we can't save everyone, but we need to move forward.
So I guess to start, Tyler, I appreciated your framing of this, and I agree that we need to start looking forward. If we had to vote tonight about masking, frankly, I would continue our mandatory masking. I mean, we're still in the Omicron surge, and we need to let that pass. Hopefully, it will pass in 2 weeks and not 2 months. We can't wait until April to revisit this, so I'm glad that we're talking about having a serious conversation about this at our next board meeting. If we wait until April, I think the community is going to destroy us, and frankly, we'd probably deserve it. Jason, I completely agree with what you were saying, that we can't wait for the problem to solve itself, and we need to be proactive about this. And with that in mind, I encourage anybody who wants a change to contact the state. If some of these negative consequences are removed, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to be able to enact a change. And also, whether you're for masking or against mandatory masking, I encourage you to contact the board. I don't know about you all, but I know I live in my bubble, and it's helpful to hear a variety of perspectives, whether you're for it or against, or you just don't know. That's useful information to us. There are two things I wanted to highlight as we look ahead to our next conversation about this. So there are two concerns that I have, and I'm hoping that two different populations can inform our thinking about it. So one is public health. And I think the last time we talked about this, one of the most compelling things to me was that we need to be doing this because we don't want our hospitals to be overrun with patients, our emergency rooms crammed. Given the current state of affairs where we are when we talk about this next, it would be helpful to know what the potential outcome of us removing masking would be on our local healthcare providers. And then the other thing that I'm concerned about is staff. Jeff, I appreciated you sending the staff survey results in your update last week, and I was struck by what by their responses about COVID protocols. I was surprised that only 12% of respondents indicated that they feel like the district has too many COVID protocols. I thought that percentage was going to be a lot higher, and a full third of respondents felt like the district has too few COVID protocols. And I'm wondering if we get rid of some of these COVID protocols, what is that going to do to a group of teachers that's already stressed out about this, which you can see from all of the other survey results. And I mean, you could, like more qualitatively, you could hear it in what Jason was sharing before. Like, this is a major stress on our teachers, and we need to factor that in as something that's important in our decision.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I think Tom made a great point about the teachers and staff. As the son of a mom who is one of the staff members at MIW, the results of this survey come to no surprise. I think a lot of the staff members, they're older. We have a lot of older staff members. They're scared they don't want to get sick. They don't want to have to put their life at risk to appease some, the members of a community who, aren't on the front lines. But I think a bigger concern is that if staff starts getting COVID, then we could have something even potentially worse than staffing shortages before. And that's, I think, what's even harder for them to deal with.
Thank you. Wow. I think me saying Ann reduces my question. Strategically, so I think everyone has had a really valid points. Jeff, can we, if you look at the staff COVID vaccine data, this is minor after we've gone through all the minutiae. It seems very odd to me that the vaccine data, the percentages are highest on December 1st, and they are lower 2 months later. And also, so I don't know if we've lost a lot of staff.
Oh, I asked the same question.
So like let's say at GHS, I mean central office, there's a smaller population, but at GHS we have 92% of the staff vaccinated as of December 1st. We currently now have 88%. So, and it seems, the numbers kind of move like that at each building. And then also, if you look at the student COVID vaccine data for 6-8, on November 2nd, we have 81%. I know my eyesight isn't great, but it's 81%. And that's when 6th graders were not eligible to be vaccinated at that point. And then on December 3rd, we have an asterisk, and we're at 72%, so it goes down. And then it goes slightly up to 76. So I would just I have a hard time kind of standing behind data that isn't quite, I know maybe if we can look at understanding why they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, Jennifer, I can answer very easily. The student one in grade 6, it's 81% because we didn't count 6th graders at all in our numbers. We just left them out completely. We only used 7th and 8th graders.
Okay.
So when it went down to 72%, we then put all of the 6th graders into the final number, or into the bottom number, and calculated it based on that, and then had the 6th graders in the mix. So that's why that number dropped so much. With the staff ones, I have asked those same exact questions to make sure that we have the right data. And we have had staff changes. We have ed techs come and go. We've had permanent substitutes who we do count in this come and go. We've had teachers come and go this year. So and even one staff member can change the percentage from month to month.
And how many staff members do we have at GHS?
We have, GHS, we have around, I think it's a little over 100 staff members.
Okay.
I noticed that too and asked that same question. But it does make sense after you broaden the group.
Okay, so we're losing about 5 staff members over a month at each building to kind of affect those numbers, up and down.
Oh, that doesn't sound right.
It does, I mean, at this point, that doesn't matter, you know, what we're trying to get to. It's just that I think sometimes I get stuck in the numbers, so, and kind of understanding them better if we're going to make decisions based off of them. But we really haven't made, the vaccination hasn't really come into play in any of our decisions, really, so up to this point.
So, well, the other thing I guess I'll say is that these are reported numbers to us. We do not rely on anything else. So anything that you see here is given to us by staff. So if we have a new staff person come in and they don't want to give us their information, they don't have to.
Oh, right.
We don't ask them for it.
Yep.
So that will affect that as well. Same thing with students. We only ask, we can't make.
Because I think the way that I've always approached this is that probably those numbers are slightly higher just because we haven't received all of the data.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always said that. I think these numbers are slightly lower, at least for this. Yeah, I think they're lower across the board, actually.
Right.
Than they probably really are.
Just based on privacy or
I totally
people
agree with
coming
that.
to the table with different views, so.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my couple of things would be is, I'm wondering over the next month or up until the committee meets next, if there's a way to get more education or discussions for the staff members on getting comfortable as we're moving out of this and having more data, even as a board and the staff, and probably what I can share with my own students at home, is where, like, the details about which mask, how long you can be in a room with someone, how it affects, you know, things like that, and having kind of, you know, whether it's having questions posed to the doctors and they could respond to it. I know we have a living document of things, but I really feel like we can't just one day, you know, March 8th, everyone walks in without a mask. All 3 of my kids hang out with all of their friends without a mask. They go to sporting events, they do things. They're not going to be shocked to the system, but it's going to be weird. And I think that we need to, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we need to educate people along the way and help them. And maybe that's already been done, but I feel like even for my own students, having that data in whether it's saying where we saw the surge, why we can consider this, what precautions we recommend, hand washing, hand sanitizer, you know, things like that, I think would be helpful. And maybe that's information that everyone has, and that's just not where I try to not do a lot of, get caught up in too much news articles and things like that. I do some, but, so I think that would be very beneficial, whether that's a roundtable with staff or collecting questions from students, having nurses come into classrooms and having those discussions, even with our little ones or middle schoolers and high schoolers. I think that's beneficial. The next thing is when the committee meets next, I would hope that we can, the committee can approach it with 2 things. One being if the masks are voted to be removed upon that recommendation, what the school will have to follow. So like a plan that would be in place. So we understand as a board what we're facing with that detail. And then I would like to see if they're not recommending removing the mask. I would recommend having someone here for us to talk to and to stand behind that so we can have a better understanding of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think to your last or second to last point, it was part of the reason why I didn't want to do, and Jason, I understand that you're going to raise a motion, but I didn't want to put anything on the agenda for tonight because I think you make a great point that we have been living with masks on in school, regardless of what you do in your personal life, for this year plus last year. And we can't assume that making that change is going to go smoothly just out of the gate. So I think it's really important that the information that is being given to us as a board to make confident decisions are also being given to our staff and our community and our students in the appropriate ways, because this is a big change. Regardless if you're ready for it or not, there are people that may not be, and so we need to give everybody as much information and time to prep for that as well. So I think we just need to be really thoughtful, like I said earlier, as we progress out of this.
And Tyler, I think just to make one point is that we're not saying that what we're looking towards is mask optional. If you feel comfortable wearing a mask, and I think we need that education of if you have a mask on, what that protection is. And I think to get people comfortable with that, at the beginning of COVID, we were wearing the mask to help protect everyone, the person that was across from us and ourselves. As we've moved through COVID, the information is different and more people are vaccinated, but if we're not necessarily all along weren't doing it just to protect ourselves, we were trying to protect our community, and I think as COVID has moved on, our approach to this should move on as well.
Absolutely. Avery, did you have something else?
I have an idea. What if we made a mask lottery?
What?
A mask lottery.
Saying that if you get chosen, you have to wear a mask that day?
No, you don't.
Oh. Yeah, kick it around. Kick it around with your buddies. See how it goes. I don't know.
Also, like, why couldn't we get just like those biochemical gas masks for teachers so that, like, if you have it on, you're not getting COVID?
I don't know. I assume that if people really would want those, they could find them. All right, we're going to move on.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Do we have the statistics on the age grouping of our teachers? I kind of.
We could probably get that. I mean, we have obviously all over, right?
Yeah.
We have
But
20s
is it like,
to.
do we have like 80% that are in the 55 to 65 high-risk group, or do we have 80% that's in the 30 to 35?
It depends on how you look at it too, because I mean, we have some younger staff with health conditions. Yeah. We have a lot of pregnancies in our district right now. Last year we had a lot. There's just a whole lot of conditions with that, and so it would be hard for me to answer. But we have shifted a little bit in the last couple of years. I would say we've had more retirements. Yeah. We've had people without as much experience, starting in our district. So yeah, it'd be hard to completely answer that question. And also the kind of job responsibilities is obviously makes a difference. For our staff, we have some staff that works so directly with kids in a certain program or whatever, where students, may not even be able to mask. So, yeah. Okay. But I mean, we can give you that ballpark. But I would say most of our staff are in the, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I would say the bulk of our staff.
Yep.
The bulk of our staff.
Okay, does anyone else? Andy?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. It's a big conversation.
Yeah. And I think I just want to, make sure that we all keep in mind that, yes, while we do have strong vaccination rates, yes, we are moving past Omicron, that we still have people within our school and our community who are very vulnerable health-wise, be it for their disability and other ways that their health is impacting themselves, and what that means as we move mask optional, that some of it is still wearing a mask to help protect other people.
Thank you for that.
I'd like to just add to, first of all, I am a proponent of getting the masks off everybody's face. I am, and I know people think sometimes I'm not, but I am. I want to get back to normal. I want kids to be able to see each other's faces, see their teachers' faces, see staff faces, staff see their kids' faces. That's just a whole place that we really need to be in. I'd like to do it this school year. I don't want to keep saying it's next school year. Let's do it this school year. Spring's coming. It's a great opportunity. But I do echo some of the things that have come up too. We have staff that are not in a place where they can do this. They might have family members that are living with them, elderly family members, whatever it is. I have parents that email me and say, please don't go there yet. I have parents that say, get them off today. Everybody's all over the place. And these are tough choices and tough decisions because we're impacting a lot of people when we do them. Since this whole thing has started, we've obviously been there, and I think we've tried to be as thoughtful as possible on all of these decisions. I do think we're at a point where it is important for us to have a serious conversation. I'm glad that I think the board sounds like it's there. I think the most important thing we can do is tell everybody that we're at a place where we're about to have a serious conversation about this. March 7th, if that's where the board wants to be, on March 7th, and that we give people a heads up, because our staff right on March 8th can't find out that they won't. Many of them watch these meetings, believe it or not. They won't. They'll find out tonight. But our staff need to know. Families need to know. We have families that make decisions about things like this. Should I send my child? Should I keep my child out? There's still people that are very much in that place. And I hear from different people in different parts of all of this. It doesn't mean that organizationally we can't move on as a district and make those decisions. It just means we have to do it in a way that people feel like, okay, I have some options, what are my options, and I have time to think about those options, and what do I do? And I think that's the most important thing, and that's what I worry about the most, is that, people have a chance to digest this. And so if the board tonight is seriously contemplating whatever that decision is on March 7th, but we get to signal people that we're moving in that direction. And again, I will say that this is February 7th. And between, there is a break in the middle, so it really shortens the time frame between now and the next board meeting. However, it's going to come quicker than we think. And, are we going to be ready for that or not? And we've got to make sure we're signaling to people that, this is definitely something that is very much on the forefront of our thinking. I think the other part I was going to say is that might be a state change too. Mm-hmm. Who knows? That's happened many times. There could be next week, the state says, go ahead, we're ripping off the Band-Aid for all the other things we've got, making it easier for you to make a decision about this. There could be the 2 districts that neighbor us, or 3 districts that neighbor us, this week or next week could say, we're done with masks. Does that change things for our district? I mean, those are things that we can say it shouldn't, but it does. We all know that. 2 years of this. So I just want to throw that out and, just make sure everybody knows. I think everybody knows, but I just want to say it.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to the board for the conversation. This is hard stuff. I do wish that the state would give us some clearer guidelines and we can continue to advocate in that way. But I appreciate the conversation. And I just want to say I appreciate the emails that we've been receiving, and I just hope that we can keep this respectful, because this is a tricky conversation for all of us to have. So thank you. So moving on, we have superintendent's report.
Yes, I'll make this brief, but it's a lot of great things going on as usual in our district, and it's hard to capture those great things in any sort of report, but I'll try to do it. So if you were watching WMTW last week, I think it was Thursday or Friday, I can't remember, it might have been even before that. There was a feature. What's that?
It was Thursday.
Thursday. Avery was featured along with some other folks in MSAD 51 on News 8. And so I just want to thank all of the folks who were interviewed or part of that. We had Avery, obviously. Lori Gunn, who's a teacher, Maureen Holland, a teacher at the high school, Ari Trebelcock was in the program, principal at the 6-8 and Peter Scott is a social worker at the high school. I think I got everyone, hopefully I didn't skip anyone. But all those folks, and I'm going to have the blog going out tomorrow, and in my blog I'll have a link to that segment. It's really well done, great comments. Avery did a great job speaking for our students about mental health in schools. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. But it was just a great segment, and I think it really illustrates where mental health needs are right now during a pandemic in our schools. That was a good illustration of that. So hopefully you get a chance to check it out. Very exciting at the middle school, 6-8. We had a team of students, Sam Pelman, Aaron Frost, Helen Kalanick, I always get the names I can't pronounce very well, Jonathan LaPlante. They are part of a NASA Tech Rise Challenge. All 8th graders participate in this each year usually in the science classes, and their team was chosen by NASA as part of the Tech Rise Challenge. I have a link in here as well if you want to go visit it. Who will be middle school and high school students. They're participating with them. One of a few teams across the country whose work around collaborating on a proposal and 30 other teams in the United States will be part of the launch of the Blue Horizon rocket by NASA next fall. So it's very exciting. It's amazing, and just want to just say great job to the 8th grade science teachers as well. J.C. Morrill is one of our 8th grade science teachers, and she's had a real nice connection with NASA for years and years. And thank you to her and all of her colleagues for this great work in helping our students get there. In this building, a couple weeks ago, for the first time in 2 years, we had an in-person drama production, The Midsummer Night's Dream, and these are some of the seniors who participated in acting or doing something in the technical area of this program. So we're really excited that that happened. There'll be another in-person production by the drama program in April. So very excited. Community Service Club. There's this Community Service Club at the high school, and here are 2 members of the club out there shoveling some seniors out of their walkways and driveways. We actually got a call from one of them in our office. Said, do you know of anybody that shovels out driveways and walkways? And got in touch with Holly Sussla, who's the coordinator, and she said, we have students ready to go. So they got their shovels out and helped some of our folks out in the community. 4th and 5th graders put out their first edition this year. They always do a great job. It's like 10 pages long. Really wonderful newspaper for 4th and 5th grade. It's been something that they have done for years and years. Daphne Sprague used to be the club advisor, and she passed away a couple of years ago, and it's finally back on, and I think Daphne would have been proud of the publication. Here's some photos, and there's a link to the newspaper as well. Congratulations, high school senior Quincy Siegel, who had a piece of work that was is now being exhibited by the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth College, a Visual and Performing Arts Emerging Young Artist 2022 juried exhibition. And this is his work, Hotel Sevilla in Spain. It's really doesn't do it justice. If you had the whole thing, I could put it up there. But it's a terrific piece of work. And also, congrats to 3 of our educators. Valerie Dominsky is a teacher at the Wilson School. Maureen Driscoll is a librarian at the Wilson School. Denise Allen is a health teacher at the high school for maintaining their national board certification. We haven't been able to post those for a while because of the pandemic, but we have teachers that continuously are working on their national board. It's a huge honor for educators to attain that certification and then maintain it. It's a lot of work. Pathways highlight, some of you might have seen this in the Cumberland Crier. We have a student that's part of our Pathways program, which is internships, a lot of pieces to Pathways. But one piece is internships in the community. So a high school senior is Dominic Sola, is interning with Chief Rumsey and Detective Burns down at the Cumberland Police Department. That's a great collaboration. We've collaborated with the police department, fire department, other community groups in the past for internships. Obviously, during the pandemic, we put some of these things on hold, but we're getting back into it. And Dan Westhoven is our pathway specialist here at the high school, and that's one of his many jobs. And then winter athletic roundup, lot of action in the sports world of high school and middle school, always very exciting. Whether it's hockey, it's basketball, Greeley's doing fairly well, holding their own in most of our sports. And these are the swimmers. And I think right now the boys and girls swim teams at the high school are kind of trying to outdo each other with, here's the boys team, kind of photos and then posting them on social media. So I was talking to Coach Hale and he said, yeah, right now they're in the outdo each other category, boys versus girls for the swim team. So they're always doing something funny if you want to check them out. And I know I didn't get all the athletic teams, but we'll keep at it and we'll see how things go in the playoff season as it comes up in a week or two.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so we will move into committee reports. Kevin is not here for finance, but wondering, Jennifer, if you'd be able to give us an update from our last meeting.
I can. We met on February 4th. We are currently having quite a few meetings that involve the budget process and looking at the recommendations or the requests rather from the administrators and how that will affect next year's budget. And we're working closely with Scott and Jeff with that. So we do not have our next meeting on the calendar yet, but I would imagine it's in the next week or so.
Awesome, thank you. Facilities, Peter, do you have anything else?
No.
Excellent. Policy, Ann.
We just met before tonight's meeting. We discussed a couple more policies that we'll be recommending for deletion. And then we began reviewing the policy regarding the selection of materials for the library.
Great, thank you. Curriculum, Jennifer?
There isn't an update. Our next meeting is the 1st of March.
Oh, sorry, one other thing I wanted to note is we will be changing the meeting time, so they won't be right before this meeting, which is for a few reasons. But one, it makes it hard for some of us to get here after holding them virtually, so we don't have our next meeting time set up, but get there.
Thank you. Communications, Mike?
We're delayed in having a meeting. We're hopefully going to get one on the books within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Awesome. Equity, I'll report out on this one. We just had our committee meeting on Wednesday of this week. We had the committee share some feedback. It was the first time we had been together since the public event that we held in January. We shared some feedback and then looked towards next steps and also discussing another public event in April. Our next meeting is second week in March. And student reports, Avery.
Yeah, not much to report on. Last Friday we had a snow day, which made a lot of people excited that they didn't have to get out of bed. And hopefully we'll have one tomorrow too, or at least a delay. But I'll take what I can get.
Thank you. All right, moving into items for action. Do we have a motion for our first item?
I move that we approve removing policy JLCCA, which is students with HIV/AIDS, from the policy manual, and just so everyone is aware, the information is no longer needed because it's covered in our bloodborne pathogen policy.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And moving on, do we have a motion for the second policy?
I move that we approve to remove policy JLCCA-AR, which is the procedures portion of the students with HIV/AIDS policy from the policy manual.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or question? Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
So I'm willing to amend this. I did write something down and happy to talk through it as needed. And before I read the motion, I'll point out that I guess that the timing is kind of tough. We have 8 days left until February vacation, and then we're not back until February 28th, which is a Monday, and then March 1st is a Tuesday, and so I guess we have a week before our next meeting then. And I think, I'm not sure if it's possible, but I think there could be value in looking at February 18th as a date for something as an interim step. And my logic there is, I realize we're going into vacation, but potentially the buildings would be mask optional during the vacation, and that might be a slightly interim step that helps some people get towards, well, when we come back and knowing that it's been optional, at least for sporting events and stuff like that, for a week. So, anyway, here goes. I move that we direct the superintendent to present a comprehensive plan and variables that make masks optional for all students and staff for possible implementation by March 8 at latest.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, can you read the motion again?
I move that we direct the superintendent to present a comprehensive plan and variables that makes masks optional for all districts and students, and staff for possible implementation by March 8 at latest. So what I'm envisioning is much like Jennifer sort of pointed out, you know, a plan that has steps and education, and again, this is optional, but it steps towards that date, a date. In here, currently, the motion reads as implementation by possible implementation by March 8th. So our meeting is March 7th. We could get a presentation from Jeff, lots of variables, and we could extend that date, but it puts something on the calendar to move towards.
For March 7th. So that presentation would be presented March 7th at our next meeting.
Correct, and possible implementation March 8th. Yep.
Okay, and so the possible implementation could be everything from masks optional, or phase 1 of this plan is education on when those masks
And maybe
might
at
be
that point, it's a 2-week program, 3-week program to get to that point where optional is done, and we can figure that out at that point. But
I just want to make sure, it's clear that whatever that plan is, it doesn't mean that if we're voting tonight, it means that it's on the table the 7th.
I put some ambiguity in there on purpose.
Yep.
Understanding that we got a vacation coming up and tight timelines, but
this is, and so this is effectively a fleshed out directive, because in the updated plan, there was the point of like, we will address this. Jeff, you recommended addressing this at that board meeting, but you're giving us like a clear directive that, yeah, we're going to do it, and there's going to be a clear plan from Jeff.
Vote, and also, you know, all the questions that were asked tonight, I'd hope to see those clearly answered. One of those being, what if we bend the rules of the state? You know.
Okay, does anyone have questions at this end or clarifying to feel comfortable voting?
So it said March 8th at the latest?
For possible implementation by March 8 at latest, yes. So
Whenever the vote is on the 7th.
Yeah, we have a meeting on the 7th. Jeff would make his presentation, and ideally we would start to roll something out that attacks this issue if we also choose that that's where we're headed.
But Tom, what he's saying is that on the 7th, it would be voted on. Something different, or it possibly could be something different that we vote on. It would be that Jeff would be bringing a plan for us to look at, right, on the 7th? It's just a plan.
It's just a plan.
Right.
It's just putting
But
everything down.
it's just, what you're looking for, Jason, is a plan for us to vote right now to say, we're looking at it and we're moving, right?
Yep, something official that has a date on it that we're moving in that direction, yes. And that there will be an official presentation that moves, that hopefully presents data to move in that direction on March 7th. Yep.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, I just, I can support it because of the word possible. So it doesn't mean that we have to.
That's correct.
At least we've got a plan, so I don't have a problem.
It's a baby step.
In voting for that.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
I don't know if this is before or after the vote. It doesn't really matter to me, but I do need a little bit more clarity as to exactly what I'm bringing on March 8th. I mean, there's certain things I obviously know I will bring, in providing a presentation to the board. And I certainly will be running all this by the advisory committee, get their feedback on all these areas so they can start helping me with this as well as the DLT. But I just want to make sure I'm covering the areas the board would like to see on March 7th.
I think one of the things that if we are asking for, I mean, to me, this just feels like a formal recommendation with a plan that supports it, which we're used to, at least in this world, in FARF terms. To me, one of the things I'd like to see if this does go forward, and I kind of assumed we were doing this anyway on the 7th, just based off of tonight's conversation, but this makes it more formal, is that we have something in place that talks to our staff about this transition and asking them what they need to feel confident moving forward, or some sort of communication with our staff. That is one of my biggest concerns, is that we end up having staff shortages as a result of this too soon. That would be something I would be interested in seeing.
Can I clarify, is if this was implemented possibly on March 8th, is the expectation that I mean, obviously we'll communicate with staff right away anyway, that this could potentially be moving in this direction for March 7th or 8th. But would the communication, would the board envision the communication being after that as well, as part of the implementation, or?
Well, I think that's, I mean, at least what I'm getting from this conversation is that you would bring us a plan that says, okay, here are the steps, phase 1 through 8, okay, that get us to a place that gives masking optional. If phase 1 is starting on March 8th, if that first phase is communication to our community, well then that's the first step. If the second step is communication to our staff, or whatever it might be. I'm seeing it as a tiered, I mean, this is kind of up to you, I guess, at this point, but that would be what I'm seeing based off of how we've done this in the past.
I'm fine with that. One of the best things I've heard here tonight is what Jennifer said about the education for those people that are uncomfortable with this, and data. And so, yes, that could be step 1, obviously.
Then also step 1 could be different for the high school. I mean, depending, like, because if it seems like, you know, that possibly could be a school that could move faster and be up in sort of the progression of everything. I think we really just have to write down these options and look at what makes the most sense for our schools.
Can I ask just, sorry, but so I understand that the March 8th is to develop the plan by March 8th. That's how I understand. That's the date is tied to making sure that we have a plan to react to by then. Not that we have to, or that it could, just that the verbiage about implementation near the date. was throwing me off. But
March 7th, we have a meeting, so my expectation would be that the presentation was there, and on the next day, hopefully, we start a process.
Right.
Based on what Jeff presents with umpteen variables.
Right.
All right, can this be figured out in an email? Like
Actually,
this
no.
discussion here? No?
Avery, no, we do have to do this. This is our board business, so. But this is important that we figure this out because it's a motion that we're voting on. So I think that there is room in the motion to give us flexibility from guidance from our COVID advisory team to our superintendent that would then bring that to us on the 7th. I think we kind of already discussed this as a group. Jason is trying to make it more formal. Does anyone else have any clarifying questions or anything? Peter?
I have none.
Thank you. Okay. Jeff, do you have the information you need?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I will be honest. I mean, it's not going to be, I'm not going to bring a 10-page plan for unmasking. I'm going to bring a few things that we might do in order to, you know, I've heard some things like education, how are we going to deal with staff, for example, that may not feel comfortable with this, and what are we going to do about that? And how about families who don't want to send their children? Are we going to provide remote options? We don't have staffing for that. So things like that, we're going to have to, I may not have all your answers on the 7th, and it may just be that I'm saying proceed at this, you know, my recommendation, proceed at this point. And, you know, okay, there'll be different options, basically, you know, because people, there will be certain people that will not like the plan of unmasking. And I think what I'm trying to say is no amount of education and no amount of saying we'll do this, that, and the other is going to make it better.
Right.
And so I think we just have to go into it knowing whatever decision is made in this district, it doesn't always, it's not always favored by everyone. That's just going to be okay. But if we have a plan, and I can't answer all those questions for the board on March, I don't think I ever can. And so we just have to know that in making a decision, things are going to happen or we'll have to deal with certain things. And I think that's just what
But Jeff, I thought you had the ability to make everyone happy.
they told me that my first year. And it didn't.
I mean, we have to understand that what makes our community great is we all have different views, and we all make our decisions for our own family in what we do.
Right.
So we have to keep that in mind as well.
Right. And I think the best thing, you know, and I did hear this tonight, and I think this is really thoughtful, is that we give people time to process it. We tell them that it's coming, and that we'll have a plan, and that we're going to be thoughtful about it, but that we're signaling that we're moving in this direction, and that start preparing, and what can we do to help you. I think that's kind of what we're going to be.
The only thing I would ask the board is that if we are voting to ask our superintendent to do this, that we think about really the answers we're looking for, and make sure that those are passed along so that we can use our time effectively here and actually implement something, whatever that might look like, on as late or as early as the 8th. I can't remember what you said, the 8th. Okay. Feel good? All right, you want to read the motion one more time and then we'll vote?
I move that we direct the superintendent to present a comprehensive plan and variables that makes masks optional for all district students and staff for possible implementation by March 8 at latest.
Okay. All in favor?
3.
I'm not seeing any opposed. Okay. And then our last item, thank you for the discussion. That was good. Our last item is to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I win.
In unison.
Who was the motion? Sorry.
We'll call Peter. And second?
Second.
Mike, and all in favor.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.